Often, when we think of intelligence, our minds immediately jump to abstract and measurable concepts. A high IQ, the ability to solve complex mathematical problems, or the erudition displayed by quoting classical philosophers. This view, while not entirely wrong, is profoundly limited and in some ways misleading. It leads us to believe that intelligence is a fixed trait, a kind of genetic gift, or a static accumulation of knowledge we possess. However, if we look closely at the lives of those around us, and more importantly, if we honestly examine our own path, we realize that true intelligence, the one that truly shapes our success, our happiness, and our ability to navigate life's challenges, is something far more fluid, practical, and dynamic. It shows up less in the specific content stored in our memory and much more in the patterns of behavior we adopt in our daily lives, especially in those seemingly insignificant moments that, when added up, define the course of our lives. You may be able to decipher intricate scientific theories, but if your everyday habits constantly sabotage you, that ability remains like a powerful engine stuck in quicksand, revving furiously yet unable to move the vehicle forward. What I propose here is not a list of accusations or a set of definitive labels. Quite the opposite. It's a map for reflection, an invitation to self-observation. Identifying these patterns is not about classifying yourself negatively, but about shedding light on shadowy areas where your intellectual potential may be inadvertently contained. Once these areas are identified, you can exercise conscious and deliberate control to dissolve these blockages, allowing your innate intelligence to flow freely and fully express itself in the practical world. One of the most common, and at the same time subtle and corrosive, habits is the almost compulsive need to be right in every interaction. At first glance, this impulse may seem like a simple display of confidence or conviction. However, when observed more deeply, it often reveals itself as a symptom of a mind that has not yet matured enough to distinguish between its essential identity and the transient opinions it defends at any given moment. When someone challenges one of our ideas or presents a fact that contradicts a deeply held belief, the defensive reaction is a protective mechanism. It is as if our inner self says, if this idea of mine is wrong, then I am wrong, and that is intolerable. This confusion between what we think and who we are is one of the greatest obstacles to genuine intellectual growth. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus, a man who knew the limitations of the human condition firsthand, having been born a slave, offered timeless insight when he said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." This phrase contains a profound truth. If you begin every conversation, every debate, every reading with the assumption that you already hold the final truth, you're building an impenetrable wall around yourself. Every new piece of data, every opposing argument will be immediately reinterpreted, distorted, or dismissed so it won't shake the fortress of your certainty. True intelligence, therefore, is not defined by the number of certainties you collect, but by the quality of doubts you are able to embrace. It is humble enough to utter the three most powerful words for learning, "I don't know," and courageous enough to venture into uncharted mental territory, exploring perspectives that may at first feel uncomfortable. The control you need to develop here is over your ego, that primitive instinct that screams for immediate validation. Every time you feel the irresistible urge to counter-argue passionately, pause, breathe, and replace that urge with a genuine, open question. What can this different perspective teach me? What aspect of reality is it seeing that I might be ignoring? This simple shift from fighter to explorer is not surrender. It's an infinitely wiser strategy for expanding your understanding of the world. Every time you prioritize learning over the need for self-assertion, you're not losing a debate. You're gaining a new and valuable piece of the complex puzzle of reality. Another deeply ingrained habit in modern culture, one that often goes unnoticed as a sign of low practical intelligence, is the chronic inability to delay gratification. We live immersed in an age of instant satisfaction, a true machine designed to produce dopamine on demand. Social media notifications, food delivery in minutes, endless video streaming, one-click shopping. Everything has been engineered to give us immediate pleasure with minimal effort. The habit of systematically seeking the easiest path, whether procrastinating an important task to endlessly scroll through a feed or abandoning a meaningful project at the first sign of serious obstacles, is one of the strongest indicators that practical intelligence is not being fully applied. Stoic philosophy, essentially a philosophy of action and resilience, places supreme value on discipline and the courage to endure discomfort. The Stoics did not see the ability to endure difficulties as punishment, but as a fundamental virtue, the key to a life of inner freedom. They understood that immediate comfort is often the greatest trap for long-term growth. This is not a defense of radical asceticism or the denial of all pleasure. It is about exercising sovereign control over your most basic impulses. It's the difference between being governed by them and being their governor. When you choose to sit down for an hour of deep study, resisting the temptation of just one more episode, you're doing far more than acquiring knowledge. You're actively training the muscle of your will. You are sending a clear message to your brain. The rewards I value, deep knowledge, a fulfilling career, mastery of a skill, personal achievement through overcoming challenges, are more important than the fleeting pleasure this distraction may offer. This ability to think and act with long horizons in mind, to project yourself into the future and work consistently toward it, is a marker of practical intelligence far more relevant and powerful than any IQ score. It is the intelligence that builds empires, whether an empire of business or simply a life well lived. Closely related to this previous habit is the very human tendency to blame external factors for our failures and difficulties. It's an almost automatic reflex. My boss is incompetent and unfair. The economy is a disaster. There are no opportunities for anyone. I'm just unlucky. I was born under a bad star. It's crucial to recognize that these statements may contain a grain of objective truth. The external world is chaotic, unpredictable, and often unjust. However, clinging to these narratives of external blame is to assume a position of complete powerlessness and victimhood. It is to hand over the reins of your life to circumstances, giving up your own power to act. Practical intelligence, the kind that truly produces tangible results and transforms realities, operates from a different principle. The principle of radical responsibility within your sphere of influence. This concept is one of the central pillars of Stoicism. Its fundamental division between what is within our control and what is not is an extraordinarily powerful tool of mental liberation. Your boss, the state of the global economy, other people's behavior, luck, or misfortune. All these belong, largely, to the realm of what is outside your control. They are variables over which you have limited or no influence. Wasting your precious mental and emotional energy on complaining, resenting, or hoping these things will change on their own is like shouting at the rain to stop falling. It's a colossal waste of resources. True wisdom, the practical manifestation of intelligence, lies in making the inner shift of accepting this reality and then redirecting all your attention and effort to what is actually within your control. And what is that? It's your response to the unfair boss. It's the skills you choose to develop to become more valuable in a tough job market. It's your persistence in the face of bad luck. It's your thoughts, your attitudes, your judgments, and your actions in this very moment. The habit of blaming others is a seductive escape from responsibility because it is psychologically easier than the hard, and sometimes painful, work of self-examination and disciplined action. Taking responsibility is an act of courage. It is asking, in the face of any difficulty, within this situation I did not choose, what is within my reach to improve, even if just a little? What lesson can I extract from this setback? This shift in focus from the external and uncontrollable to the internal and malleable is one of the most powerful transformations you can make in your life. A fourth habit, particularly relevant in the digital information age, is the passive, uncritical consumption of content. spending hours endlessly scrolling through social media feeds, absorbing sensationalist news or superficialities, or binging on purely escapist entertainment without any filter or purpose is the intellectual equivalent of living on junk food. Yes, it feeds you, but with empty calories that do not nourish, only clog the system, weakening it over time. True intelligence is not a passive accumulation of data, but an active and deliberate process of study and critical digestion of information. Seneca, one of the most eloquent Stoic philosophers, offered timeless advice on reading. Advice we can extend to all forms of information consumption. We should be careful in our choice of authors, and we should treasure what we have chosen. This means you must become the curator of your own mind. You must exercise active, rigorous control over what you allow into your mental space, your most precious asset. Instead of being a passive container that accepts everything an algorithm throws at you, become an active gatekeeper. Before you click, press play, or scroll, pause and ask yourself, is this information truly valuable? Is it grounded? Is it contributing to my growth and understanding of the world? Or is it just background noise to fill a void? Gradually replace those moments of passive consumption with sessions of active study. This does not mean you cannot have moments of relaxation, but that you should make them intentional, not your default state. Dedicate time to reading a book that challenges your mental structures, listening to a podcast on philosophy, history, or science that demands your attention, or learning a new skill with practical application in your life. Intelligence feeds on high-quality fuel, and you have full and absolute control over what you put on your intellectual plate. This daily choice is one of the most profoundly influential on the quality of your thoughts, and consequently, of your life. Finally, and perhaps the most crucial habit of all, is the neglect of self-knowledge. Socrates, the father of Western philosophy, left us one of the most famous maxims: an unexamined life is not worth living. Despite its fame, this is perhaps the most ignored philosophical lesson in everyday practice. Most people live in autopilot mode, running from one task to another, reacting to external stimuli and inner emotions without ever stopping to ask why. They follow internal scripts, thought patterns, and emotional reactions installed in childhood or adolescence that have never been seriously questioned or revised. This lack of reflection is like navigating a stormy ocean with maps from a completely different territory. Emotional and social intelligence, absolutely vital components of overall intelligence, and often more decisive for success and well-being than raw cognitive capacity, are born directly from disciplined self-examination. Intelligence that is not applied to oneself is intelligence cut in half. Setting aside even 10 to 15 minutes at the end of the day for quiet, honest reflection is as important a form of study as reading a book. Ask yourself, what did I feel today? What were my most reactive moments? Why did certain comments affect me so deeply? Where could I have acted with greater wisdom? What does this situation reveal about my fears, my values, my deepest desires? This practice is not about self-flagellation or cultivating guilt. It is about illuminating the dark corners of your own psyche, understanding the mechanisms that trigger your automatic responses, and from that understanding, gaining progressively greater control over your inner life. It is philosophy applied at its most personal and transformative level. Ultimately, it is crucial to understand that intelligence is not a destination to be reached, a diploma to be framed on the wall. It is an ongoing practice, a philosophy of action that manifests in every choice, no matter how small it may seem. Each of the habits we've discussed represents a fork in your day. At every moment, you have the power to choose the path that strengthens your mind. You can choose curiosity over defensiveness, discipline over distraction, responsibility over blame, conscious consumption over passive consumption, and deep reflection over automatic reaction. By exercising sovereign control over these seemingly insignificant choices, you are not merely acting to appear smarter in the eyes of others. You are committing yourself to the most important project of your life, to actively become a wiser, more resilient, more self-aware person. And therefore genuinely more intelligent. And that is the only kind of intelligence that, in the end, truly matters and makes a difference.